Okay. All right, so let me know when you're recording and I'll get started.
I got it.
All right. Oh, I can see that. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to do a growing and cooking summer style webinar with you today. Do I have permission to, I think I need your remote, Andrea. I don't think I can advance the slide.
What about now?
Nope.
I did not reclaim host. Do you want me to just do it? I'm sorry. I don't know. It should work.
I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, that's weird. Request remote. All right.
Yes, there we go.
We
Thanks
can
for
do
your
it.
patience, everybody. You'd think we know, but yeah, I proved it. Okay.
There we go. It's just very slow. Okay, we're good.
Thanks, Ann.
All right. So today we have both myself, Ann Yasalanis. I'm the residential horticulture extension agent and master gardener volunteer coordinator in Polk County, and Andrea, who is our family consumer science extension agent in Polk County. We're going to present this webinar today. If you haven't been on Zoom before, or you haven't have forgotten, just a reminder that if you need something, issue with the sound, something's not advancing and I can't tell, just type it in the chat box and either Andrew or I will get to it. And then you can also type questions in there. If you're afraid you're going to forget when we get to the end, you can type them in there, but we will wait till the end to answer any questions, and we'll allow you to unmute at that time as well. So you can use the chat or not. And then we will send you an evaluation after our webinar, because we like to make sure that we're sharing information that's helpful to you and that is useful. And if you have any ideas of other growing and cooking style classes, it's something we enjoy offering, and we're always looking for new ideas. All right. I'm going to hide all of my videos and stuff here. Okay. All right, so today we're going to talk about planting a vegetable garden and what to grow seasonally, a little bit about soil solarization as we come into the summer months, and then Andrea is going to take over and talk about what you can do with everything that you've grown in your Florida garden. So we're talking summer style, and I know you're thinking, why are we talking about growing stuff for summer? It's April. But in planning your garden, you start a few months in advance. So if you think about the weather right now, it's heating up. So we're prepping for summer gardens at this point. So just kind of keep that in mind, that when you're talking about gardening, you're at least a couple months prior to the full-fledged growing season of whatever that crop might be. So that's what we're talking about today. As we move into talking about warming weather, it's important to talk about the heat as we work outside. Growing vegetables in Florida in the summer can be really hard. Hot, muggy temperatures can lead to disease and insect issues, and high night temperatures mean no summer tomatoes. So if that's something that you thought you might grow here in Central Florida, you will not. Look for crops native to Southeast Asia or the Caribbean, and then also the crops that we'll discuss today. There are less things that we offer in a summer style vegetable gardening workshop than we would, in a cooler season gardening workshop, just so that it's just a little bit less that you'll be growing. And not only is the heat tough on vegetable crops, it can be tough on you as well. So remember to be safe as you work in your garden this summer as well. And there's some good tips here from some of our master gardener volunteers as far as staying a little bit cooler in your summer garden. So when you're preparing to plant and grow vegetables, no matter the season, it's really important that you make sure your yard has the growing conditions suited to what you plan to grow. So containers, raised beds, in ground, or grown without soil using hydroponic methods. If you provide your plants what they need, you will be successful. So they're going to need to grow in well-drained soil, and you can either mix your own or purchase items such as potting mix or compost. They will need sun. So if you have not grown any vegetables before and you're looking for the best place to grow them, make sure you have a spot that's going to get about 6 hours of sun each day. And less than that could reduce your crop yield. If you have a yard with mostly partial sun, a little more shade than that 6 hours of sun, there might be some herbs that you could grow instead of some of our vegetable crops. So there's still a possibility for you to be able to grow something edible in your yard, even if you don't have a lot of sun. And then finally, when you're selecting a location and prepping for your garden, make sure it's easy for you to maintain and harvest your garden. So anything you can do to make it easier for you will make vegetable gardening more appealing. So for example, locating the vegetable garden near a water source so that it's easy for you to water. If you're using garden tools routinely, keep those right by the garden. Put your compost bin at arm's length so that you can both add materials from your garden and then the compost into your garden as well. And then when you're ready to harvest and use what you've grown, make the trip to harvest easy as well. So if you're in the kitchen and you think I need to just, grab a handful of herbs, or I forgot I had some lettuce outside, is it easier for you to run out to the garden and grab something, or is it going to be too much work? You don't want to go out there. It's, too far. Got to find shoes, this and that. So make it convenient for you when you're cooking and can reach for some of this stuff last minute to add to whatever you're making in the kitchen. And then just like with all plants in your landscape, make sure you've decided what to grow based on how much space you have. So follow these general guidelines to plan and prepare to get you off on the right foot. And that's selecting the right site. So where can you grow vegetables? Lots of different places, and it's possible to combine these as well. So in the ground is something that is possible for you to do, and you can see some examples here of vegetables grown in the ground. Raised beds are an option, and I like some of these combinations here, particularly this picture in the middle where the homeowner has combined containers and raised beds together. So think about the different ways that you can combine these different growing methods based on how much space you have or what you're interested in growing. And the reason I like these containers is maybe you have something that's more sensitive to, maybe in the cool season, to frost or freeze, and you can grab those containers and take them inside. Or if there's something like mint that you don't want to spread throughout the garden, you can grow that in a container. And it looks really nice with your vegetables as well. This is a hydroponic system, and that means you're growing crops without soil. And there are quite a few different ways you can do that. There are methods that you can purchase, like the tower there that's on the left. And there's lots of ways you can make your own type of hydroponic system as well. And you can see that in the two photos on the right there. We do have some plans on how you can grow with hydroponics. It's a little bit more tricky than others, but we can certainly help you if you're interested in growing that way. And then certainly you can mix your edible plants right in with your ornamental landscape. As we go through and talk about some of the specific plants that you can grow today, think about their ornamental quality as well and how you can just incorporate those in. So in this photo on the left here, you can see in the foreground blueberries, and they make a really nice shrub in the landscape. And so you can incorporate those right in, just like you would any other shrubs. And you can see in the other photos as well, different greens, different herbs, lots of ways that you can incorporate edible plants into your existing ornamental garden if you don't want to have or don't have the space for a whole separate garden. So really, the options are endless as long as you select your site following the criteria that we talked about previously. Okay, so after you've selected a site and determined how you'll grow your vegetables, it's helpful to create a plan, just like you would with your landscape. You can make a list of supplies you'll need, like seeds or transplants, different tools. You can use a gardening journal. In our office, our Master Gardener volunteers have written and sell a 12-month garden guide. And they use that and sell that to record, what you're planting now, how it goes, if you have issues with something, something you had great success in growing, something you enjoyed eating, something maybe new that you wanted to try that you didn't like and you don't want to grow next year. All of those things are really helpful to note in some kind of a garden journal. And it becomes really valuable as you go season to season, and reminding yourself what you grew, how easy it was, if you enjoyed eating it. If you had a huge crop of something, that's always fun to note as well. Lots of, zucchini to share with others or things like that is really fun. When you're creating your plan, you'll need to make note for each season. And again, a journal will help you with this as well, because you need to know what you've grown and what location throughout your garden, so that you can properly rotate your crops. Crop rotation is important because of pest management, and we have to rotate out of our plant family, not just out of plant type. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So this is in our vegetable crop rotation fact sheet. It's really helpful, and you can see here the words that are kind of going up and down. Those are the plant families. And then we've listed a variety of common plants that you might be growing that are part of that family. So for example, if you look at the Asteraceae that has the lettuce, endive, escarole, radicchio, all of those, you would not rotate within those families. So you wouldn't want to grow lettuce and then endive. You'd want to grow lettuce and then beans or something like that to rotate all the way out of that plant family. And again, we have information to help you. That's kind of a cheat sheet for you as well. And then additionally, this is in the same fact sheet, just kind of a sample way, a sample plan for crop rotation that you could put into use in your garden beds. And this is broken apart by area, which is something you can do. And again, using a journal or something to record that as well helps you flip back to previous growing season and say, okay, last growing season I planted beans here in this raised bed. I need to rotate out and plant lettuce here this season. Okay, so we've talked site selection, we've talked planning, and now we need to talk soil as we get ready to plant. So it's important to prepare your site when you get to the point of planting. If you look at the addition of organic matter on this slide, you may have to prep the soil and site a few months in advance of planting as well. So you can see why keeping track in a garden journal can be important. So if you have organic matter, you can till that into the soil 3 weeks prior to planting. Composted material, fully composted material, you can add in at any time. Anything that's uncomposted has to be added directly 30 days from planting. Any manures, animal manures, can be added directly to your planting beds, but that needs to be 90 to 120 days from planting. So you can see why this advanced planning is very, very important. And certainly you can use cover crops or commercial soil mixes as you would like as well. So usually what I tell people to do, instead of adding uncomposted materials or manures directly to planting beds, is to add it to your compost pile, compost that down, and then you can go ahead and add that, because planting 120 days out is sometimes difficult. If you're planting in containers, you'll still need to purchase or make well-drained soil mixes. It's important to remember to replace those annually. And there again is an option for the hydroponic or soilless systems as well. Another important part of getting started in the garden is with irrigation. How are you going to water these plants? Typically, our vegetable gardens are going to require more water than established ornamental plants in the landscape. So you do need to have some sort of a plan. Micro irrigation is pretty easy to install and is a good option for most types of gardens. It reduces water use, so it can save money and conserve water in your garden. If you can put in drippers or small bubblers, it can reduce disease if we can keep the foliage dry on those vegetables. So that can sometimes be a problem with, continued wet leaves can be a problem in a vegetable garden. You can certainly reduce weeds in rows if they're not watered as well. So that precision irrigation is very helpful with that. It's also very easy to install. You can put it in a hose bib that's, a nearby water source outside and hook that up pretty easily. Run it off a battery operated timer or even connect to your existing sprinkler system is an option. And it's pretty flexible, uses poly tubing. I have some other photos to show you of micro irrigation, and you can see how flexible it is. It can adapt over time. You can remove it, add to it, all sorts of things like that. So it's certainly something that I recommend in a vegetable garden. And these are a couple of different ways that micro irrigation has been used in vegetable gardens. So in the top left photo here, you can see the white PVC pipe there. So that's the white PVC is connected to the sprinkler system, and then there are small micro irrigation, the black pipe there that goes right into the vegetable garden there. So that's all automated on that system. The top right photo, you can see a sample design with micro irrigation coming off that hose bib outside. That's certainly something you could do. Just dig a small trench so you don't have to worry about, mowing over any of that tubing. It's pretty easy to do. The bottom left photo, you can see micro irrigation being used to irrigate containers. So it works really great for containers that tend to dry out more quickly, particularly if you use something like clay pots or something. So this just has a larger poly pipe and then kind of smaller, thin, what's called spaghetti tubing that goes right into each pot. And this homeowner had, I think, maybe 10 to 12 different containers lined up with, peppers and herbs and tomatoes and all sorts of things there. And they were just all irrigated that way. And then finally, the bottom right photo, you can see how raised beds are being prepped for micro irrigation. So kind of conversely, as to that first photo where the white PVC piping is on the exterior of the beds, with this one, they put the PVC in the middle of the beds, and then the micro irrigation will be run off of that. So there's certainly a lot you can do there. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the plants, the common plants that you can grow in the warm summer months. This is from one of our fact sheets that indicates with the little X's when these crops can be planted. And this is for zone 9 for Polk County. So the X's are when you plant, and then those orange shaded boxes are harvest time. So you can see, for example, the bush beans plant in April, and then you could harvest them through June and then plant again in November. So this is also another one that's a really helpful fact sheet. Tells you how many days to harvest. So from planting, how many days till you start getting that crop. And then if the crop likes to be started from seed or transplants. Okay, so this is a very common summer crop here. This is okra. It's 60 days to harvest. And you can start the seeds in March or April. So you can see again why we're planting so far in advance, right? And you can plant transplants through July. So usually if you can be on the early side, you can start things from seed because obviously they take a little bit longer. If you're running a little late on some things, you can purchase transplants and start that way. So kind of gauge that on how well you did at planning for that season. You can harvest early and often. The pods, you should harvest those when they're about 2 to 3 inches long. And the important thing to remember about okra is it gets very large. It'll grow 2 to 7 feet tall. So that's pretty big for a vegetable plant. So really make sure you're planting accordingly for this one. This next one is sweet potatoes, 85 to 130 days to harvest. You can plant February through June using small plants called slips. And these are things that you can purchase at garden centers. After they're harvested, you can cure them in a dark, warm room for a couple of weeks to increase sweetness, and you can eat the greens as well. This is a vining kind of ground cover type crop. So instead, the okra gets very big and tall where the sweet potatoes are going to spread. So you'll need room for them to spread if you're going to be growing sweet potatoes. So make sure you have the space for those vines to kind of run and cover as well. Southern peas, this is a popular summer edible to grow, 75 to 90 days from harvest. You can start planting in the garden in April all the way through summer. Harvest frequently so that they will continue to produce for you, and you can plant them really anytime after danger of frost in the spring. Now, I mentioned no tomatoes in the summer, but you can grow some of these smaller cherry tomatoes, no big giant tomatoes like beefsteak or things like that. But you can grow cherry tomatoes here in the summer months. 90 days to harvest. You can plant them May through August. If you start the seeds in July, you can plant those transplants in the garden in August. If you're looking at tomato seeds or transplants to purchase, it's important to remember that indeterminate varieties will continually produce over a period of months, and determinate will produce only one crop. And so usually these cherry tomatoes are indeterminate, so you can continually get a harvest from them. And that's what most people want out of their tomatoes anyway. And here we have Jerusalem artichoke. This is 130 days to harvest. It's got to make that big tuber there. You can start planting these in April. These are also known as sunchokes, and you can see the foliage in the far right and the flowers in the far left. They are really attractive, but they do get big. So again, like okra, this is going to be like 6 feet tall. So again, plan for that in your garden. Both this one and the okra would be really great additions to just your ornamental landscape. You can plant that right in with your other shrubs and perennials. Peppers, lots and lots of types of peppers that you can grow. They're usually fairly small plants, so growing those in a container on a patio is pretty easy if you don't have the space. They are 60 to 80 days to harvest if you're starting them from transplants, 80 to 100 if you're starting from seed. You can start the seeds in March and transplants April through May. Again, lots of varieties available for peppers. Quite a few varieties of eggplants as well. 90 to 115 days to harvest. You can start your seeds in March. They are self-pollinated, but if you can attract some bees to help, that is a good thing. And lots of fun varieties available too. You can see there's some interesting shapes and sizes and colors of our eggplants. So a lot of times we get questions about when the garden is done. When should I, pull out everything so I can start, planning and planting for next season? For these summer gardens, most gardeners remove their crops when they stop producing, usually June, July. If you want to collect seeds for the next warm season planting, you might need to pull some things earlier. That really kind of depends. If you have plans for the next season, you might have to pull earlier as well. It just really depends on what your next steps are with your garden. So you need some time to prep your soil before next season planting. You'll need to pull things June or July. If you would like to solarize your soil at this time, that's something that can be done in July, and you can see a photo there on the right of solarization. And that would be done if you want to kill any disease or pests that you might have. So maybe you forgot to rotate crops for a couple years and you got a really bad problem with nematodes or something like that. You might say, well, I'm going to solarize this bed, and now I know about rotating, and I'll start from here on out. So you can solarize your bed. Just remember that when you do this, it's going to not only kill the pests you don't want, but also the good guys will be killed as well. So any fungus you were trying to grow to, mycorrhizae or something to benefit the roots, or, earthworms that are in there, whatever it might be, they're not gonna make it through this solarization. We have good instructions on solarization, basically being, removing debris, tilling the soil, and this clear plastic goes over for 6 weeks with all sides tucked in tight, as you can see there. And it's not something that's necessary. It's up to you if you have the time to do it. Again, 6 weeks is sometimes a long time for you to have your garden space inactive. And maybe if it's something you have a couple beds, you can do it a little bit at a time. Maintenance and pest control in the garden. We could spend a long time on this. There are a lot of cultural practices that can affect the health of your garden. But the main things to mention are, if you're using proper irrigation techniques and not overwatering, you're allowing for good drainage, you're going to encourage healthy plants. If you're growing at the proper pH, which for vegetables is 5.5 to 7, and you can get a soil test done at your extension office or send it away to the IFAS soils lab. That'll help minimize any nutrient related issues in your garden. And then just general housekeeping, keeping a tidy garden. So that means like proper spacing, cleaning rows, removing anything that's crowded if you're starting from seed, dead unproductive plants, and having nice clean mulch. That'll help with any pest and disease issues. Additionally, maybe adding some nearby flowering plants or nearby pollinator plants that'll help attract beneficial insects, which may help with any pest problems that pop up. And then remember, crop rotation is going to be really important as well to keeping issues down with your vegetable garden. Okay, so we talked about selecting a site, preparing a site, a couple different plants that you can grow, edible crops you can grow this summer, and then a little bit about maintenance and pest control. And I'm going to now pass it back to Andrea, and she's going to talk about enjoying the fruits of your labor in the kitchen.
Thanks, Ann. Okay, so we'll get started. So cooking summer style. So it might be hard to forecast, be in this mindset, you haven't really planted it yet, but just thinking about, we're going to talk about just some ways that you can maybe use what you will produce. So first of all, just enjoying the veggies, preparing them safely. We don't want you guys getting sick. Storing them, cooking them, and then preserving them. Say you have a really bountiful crop. So ship to consuming vegetables. So the My Plate has taken the place of the pyramid, and it's telling us, maybe half our plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables. So if you guys are planting some stuff in the garden, people who are planting gardens, and especially kids who see it growing in the garden and help with it, are more likely to eat it. So I'm going to definitely encourage that. If you have a tomato out there, you're probably more likely to go and pick it, versus, oh, well, I don't have that, we'll leave it out. So half the plate, and then thinking of eating the rainbow. So when you're thinking of crops too, maybe think of all the different colors that you can do. Ann showed eggplant to okra to bell peppers. So, just the different colors, they all do something different for you. And then, how can you maybe use them? So thinking about them, using them in place of some of the meat. It's looking like there's studies coming out, study after study, that eating plant-based foods is really looking like, if that's our base. So the plant-based foods would be like the fruits and the vegetables, nuts, seeds, and beans to get some protein. Just those kind of things really are, people who eat most of those as the basics of their diet, they're having the most health benefits and feeling the best and living the longest. So if you can grow some extra vegetables, that would be great. Then feel free to share, right? So using place in some of the meat and thinking of that, the vegetables as actually the main event. And then you can do some meat if you'd like as a garnish, enjoying in most meals and snacks, and then adding extra to recipes. So how do you prepare them safely? So just a couple of quick tips. You might have heard to wash your produce, but just sometimes I sometimes even get careless. If it's in your own garden, you feel like you know what was in there, but just you have to be careful a little bit because harmful bacteria may be in that soil or the water where that produce is going. So it can also become contaminated after its harvest. So really just washing all produce under running water, even if you're not eating the skin, is really important. And soap is not recommended. They found that running water does a really good job. And then using the produce brush for firm produce, such as maybe like a cantaloupe peel. So you might wonder why you're washing the cantaloupe or why do you wash the watermelon if you're not eating the peel. And it's because when you're putting it on the cutting board or on the counter, you're then going to cut it, and some of the like cut pieces might end up touching the same spot that the peel touched. So you don't want to put a dirty thing on your cutting board. And so that's why it's really important just to give everything a quick wash. And then remembering to keep the meat, eggs, things that they need to be cooked, right? So we don't eat that slab of meat usually raw unless you're in special really occasions. And so keeping that separate from the produce that you are maybe eating raw is very important so that the bacteria from that meat doesn't get on the produce. And so thinking about just things like remembering when you're taking a hamburger to the grill, that spatula that's using it for the raw burger, you'd want a separate one for when it's cooked because you don't want to put it back on that spatula with where the raw one was because the spatula hasn't been cooked. So I guess just remembering that and then washing the cutting boards and utensils in between. And these are the 4 steps of safety. So it's kind of taught: clean, separate, cook, and chill. So as soon as you cut it, the fruit or vegetable, then it needs to be chilled. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb. The tomatoes, they're, as you'll see, definitely better tasting and can actually retain nutrients better sitting out. But once you cut it, you got to put it in the fridge. So let's talk specifics now. So okra, so you might know it by its slimy texture. It's a little bit slimy when it's cut open. It can be eaten raw or cooked, and it's really low in calories. It's fat-free, and it's high in fiber. And that stickiness, that's actually good for us. So you're doing a good thing. Selecting pods that are tender and small, 2 to 4 inches. These pods, like Anne probably showed some, but just they can get to be really long. And if you've ever tried to eat that, once somebody gave me one, I couldn't even get it open with a saw. So just thinking about, then it's after it's time, you might think, oh, good, big okra. But no, just like other things, I guess they're more tender and delicious when they're shorter. And they can be stored in a perforated plastic bag for only a couple of days. You just have to be careful because you'll start to notice black spots. So the sooner you eat it, the safer it'll be, basically. And the more it is cut, the slimier it'll become. So if you don't really like that and really bothers you, or if it bothers your spouse and they won't eat them, just if you can keep them whole and cook them that way, there'll be less of that slime, especially roasting. So it's also, I have to tell you too, that there's seeds in there and they are used as a coffee substitute sometimes. They don't have caffeine, but maybe that's why I didn't replace the coffee bean, but I guess it does have that similar idea, flavor. So okra, just 5 ways to do it would be that gooey texture, great for thickening soups. So you can use this to your advantage, right? Where you might have to put like cornstarch or something. Maybe you could just put some okra in there and you could roast them. It's not slimy if you're not cutting those ends. So once you cut it open, then it just goes more. And so if you haven't tried these, you got to really try these. Boil whole. You can do that just until tender, and then you can add like lemon juice and black pepper. That's a good way to do it. You can cut them and they pair really well with tomatoes and onions. They're also good with like corn, fish, and chicken if you wanted to do that. And then you can make okra waffles, and you can even put them, or okra waffles. Yes, so you can put them in okra waffles, and they're just really mild. So would be a good way to use some of them. And you can also make okra marshmallows. Okay, so sweet potatoes, as you might remember, so that same thing as carrots, they have that vitamin A, and that really helps your eyes and your skin. So if you're looking for that, sweet potatoes would be the one. You can store them at room temperature. You eat the peel for the most nutrients, and then you can eat the greens raw or cooked. And the greens, You can kind of like use them in place of spinach. So they're really good sauteed just with a little olive oil, salt and pepper. You can put a dash of soy sauce on there. They're good in stir fries because they kind of cook down like spinach does. And in the Philippines, the leaves are eaten fresh in salads. And we have grown a lot at the extension here, and I've had a lot of salads with them. And so been really blessed by that. But they are pretty good. They're not very bitter, so it's really nice, kind of like a spinach. And then thinking about some other ways to use them, say you get a lot, you can do like oven fries, right, with the sweet potatoes. You can stuff them with walnuts and cranberries, or you could try like a quinoa black bean mixture. And then you could add them to smoothies or savory oatmeal. These could also go in pancakes or waffles. And then you could slice them and eat them raw. There's a school in California. I was just looking at their snack list, and they have raw sweet potatoes sometimes. So you could also do, obviously mashed potatoes, and you could use them in place of shepherd's pie. Use the sweet potatoes instead of the normal potatoes. Veggie chili, a lot of times, sometimes they'll have them in burritos. Black bean and sweet potato go really well together. So then we have the southern peas. So they're part of the bean family, and there are 3 types of southern peas. There's the Crowder, the cream, and the black-eyed. So the Crowder ones have the most robust flavor. Then there's the cream peas, which you can imagine they're more mild. And then the black-eyed peas are somewhere in the middle. They're also a good source of fiber and iron, and as you might remember, protein. And so like about 1 pound unshelled. So if you're buying these at the market or something like that, it equal about 1 cup of cooked peas. So you want to cook these before you're eating them. So you remove them from the pods, you rinse, and then you have to cook them till tender, about 30 to 45 minutes. And so they're kind of like black beans or something like that. So that would be the southern peas. And you want to look, when you're looking for them, you want to look for small, plump, bright green pods that are firm and crisp and well filled with medium-sized peas. And then you can remove those peas by shelling the pods. And then you can also freeze the peas, if you get a lot at the same time and there's just too much. I know a lot of people who freeze them, and you do want to blanch them before you do that. So blanching destroys the enzymes and removes air, and it shrinks food, and it loosens the peels. So it's kind of like all these advantages, but it really, one of the main things is it stops the nutrients, and it stops the nutrients from deteriorating, and it stops the quality from deteriorating. So that's why you blanch it. So when you blanch something, you put it in boiling water for a certain amount of minutes. Each vegetable has a different time depending on if it, if it's like a harder one like the peas or a softer one, maybe like okra. And then you dip it in this cold water, and then you'll have that's blanching it. And then once that you kind of dry them off, and then you can freeze them, and they'll stay that bright, green color versus deteriorating. So blanching is a great thing, and you don't have to do it with fruits, but a lot of vegetables you do. So southern peas, just some ways to use them. You could cook them with lean pork, chicken, or onions, green pepper, and celery. That's a very southern way. You could mix them with corn. Use them as a filling and stuffed tomatoes. So you got those little cherry tomatoes. You can just kind of, stuff them, mash them, use them as a dip. You can make chilled salad with tomatoes, rice, and olive oil like vinaigrette dressing, and have those in there. I've seen a lot of black-eyed peas used that way, and also cooking them with collard greens for good luck throughout the year. Then we have the cherry tomatoes. So if you're growing cherry tomatoes, you might love them, and they might not last very long just off the plant. But there are some fun ways to use them. So they're high in lycopene, and even more so after cooking. And that's the thing that really helps our heart. So kind of a great benefit there. They continue to ripen after picking, and the taste is best when stored at room temperature. And that taste continues to get better up until a point. So then it'll start deteriorating. But if it gets to that point, then you want to put them in the fridge because that'll stop it from deteriorating. But, they've really found that researchers have found that the tomatoes volatiles. And so that's like the good taste that we get from the tomatoes. That really storing them at room temperature allows them to maintain those and continue to produce more. But once you put them in the fridge, then they lose those volatiles. So that's why sometimes if I guess you've had tomatoes that have always been in the fridge, they might not taste as, like how you can taste a homegrown tomato. And so that might be just one reason. Maybe they've been chilled. So cherry tomatoes, just some way ways you can use them. You could roast them. Still, they're starting to burst. And then you can use them as a topping for fish or toasted bread. You could mound them in a pastry shell and bake them. You can have like kind of like a tomato pie, soup and salad. Definitely great. Tossing them with pasta and slicing them in half and oven drying them. So that would be like a oven dried tomato, right? And then we're talking about the Jerusalem artichoke. So Anne and I just got to try it not too long ago, and we decided that raw, it has like a nutty flavor, and kind of like if you tried jicama or like a water chestnut, it kind of tastes like that raw. It's really good, actually. I think I would snack on it. I think Anne said she would too. You don't have to peel them, but it does kind of, you can see how it kind of, you could see maybe there's potential for dirt to be in between. So maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea, but otherwise scrub them well. They're mild tasting, as we said, and then they have fewer calories than potatoes and good nutrition value. They have iron, copper, potassium. They're also known for their inulin, and it's a type of fiber that has been shown to really benefit us. So that's like an advantage of them versus maybe some other vegetables. So you can also cook them or roast them, but they can be like sliced and used into salads and things like that. I think I would love to try to grill them here. So you can eat them raw in salads, you can pickle them, you can roast them, you can cook them and mash them and use them like mashed potatoes. So we also just cooked a really small amount and tried it. And I think we all agreed the taste totally changed when it cooks. So it's like you have two different vegetables, two different tastes. So if you don't like them one way, you might really like them the other way. So you can use them kind of, it was like almost like an artichoke taste actually. When they're cooking them. So you can puree them, you can roast them, use them in anything from soups to meatloaves. I found recipes on using all those ways. Okay, so the peppers, you would want to refrigerate. The capsaicin gives hot peppers their hot flavor and is good for us. So the spicy peppers, you want to wear gloves when cutting. Just rinsing them off rinsing your hands with water won't wash that feeling away. Has anybody done that before where they got some burning hands because of the hot peppers? I was going to ask, what do you guys, and then I wanted to ask, do you guys know what the spicy part, it says right on the PowerPoint, I guess, but spicy part comes from the inner pith, right, and rib of the pepper. So it's not necessarily the seeds. So over time, they have found like the spicy peppers do boost your metabolism, but it's probably not, gonna have major effects or anything like that, and it can raise the body temperature. And you know how it does affect your hands sometimes if you have put them in anything, like if you've used them for cutting the peppers. It also they put capsaicin in a cream because it's shown to help alleviate pain. So it's like at a certain point, some of that that burning, kind of like the power that it has, might actually help us. So it's kind of cool. It does that inside the body too. So people who have eaten more, they feel less pain. So bell peppers, something I didn't really understand when I was little, but the green peppers, they actually, if you leave them on long enough, most of the varieties will eventually turn to the orange and then the red if they're left on the vine long enough. And you can understand why the red ones usually cost more than the green ones then, because you have to wait a longer time. And, if you wanted to just harvest them green, you can get a bunch more. So the nutrients increase and they also get sweeter. So these are not spicy at all. And many people find the red is the easiest to digest, which makes sense because sometimes when foods are riper, they become more digestible. So kind of like eating like a really green banana. So it's more digestible when they get more yellow. Okay, so bell peppers, 5 ways then. Some ways you can have them. Just thinking, sometimes you're like, okay, stir fry, I can put them on my salads, but also thinking just eating them raw or stuffing them. There's so many good ways you could put stuff in them and bake them. I know a lady who actually just does that a lot and microwaves them just to make it kind of a simple thing. She's just by herself, so she makes one, and just puts in like rice or beans, and then just microwaves it with a little cheese on top, and it's a pretty good meal, and then you get a good amount of vegetables. Using them in omelets or frittata, and then roasting them. So thinking about, roasted red peppers, how you sometimes need them in recipes or you want to buy them at the store. So you can definitely do that. You can use a gas flame or you can do them under the broiler. And so what you would do is you kind of try to lay them flat, cutting them in half. And then you put them under the broiler until the skins separate from the flesh. And so you can kind of like peel off the skin and they have that roasted flavor. And then you can put them on salads or sandwiches, whatever you'd use roasted red pepper for. So eggplant, I think that's always hard sometimes to figure out when it's ready because you're like, it just keeps getting bigger or is it going to stop now? So to test the ripeness, you push on the eggplant with your thumb and it shouldn't spring back. So once it's indented in there, you know that you're ready to go. And so it won't really indent that far, but that's a good way to tell. You can store them about 1 week in the refrigerator unwrapped. They don't need to be wrapped. And they kind of like that air freedom. Contains a lot of water. So that's why many recipes tell you, salt your eggplant and let it sit for a while because that'll draw out some of the moisture. And just because you don't want the dish to be watery, but you can definitely eat it without salting it. So you can skip that step if you would like, but you might have more water coming off your dish. So just think about that if you use them for something like lasagna, eggplant lasagna. It works well instead of the noodles. Ratatouille, that's a really good one. You can make, ratatouille has like the summer squashes and the tomatoes. There's also eggplant bacon. So they make that out of liquid smoke. They put the eggplant maple syrup, smoked paprika, a little olive oil, and then you roast it. So you can make the eggplant bacon. You can bake it whole. You can cut it in half. You can roast it. You can also just take if you're just trying to figure out what it tastes like, you can just puncture it, right? Put it in the oven or put it in the microwave and you just cook it and it'll really kind of, it has a lot of water, right? So it just kind of becomes almost like a really soft tofu or a sponge, and it's very neutral flavor. So it takes on whatever you put it on it. So Italian things go well with it, like Italian tomato sauce and Parmesan cheese. If you like those kind of things, that's really good. Or you could go the bacon style. So freezing vegetables, just going to talk about just a little bit, just so you can have an idea. So we talked about, blanching and why it's important just to stop the nutrients. And you want to freeze it within a few hours if possible. There's a story about people who would pick corn and they would just basically like run to the house and then throw it in the pot to blanch it and then freeze it just because the flavor, is deteriorating. It's not that fast, but people talk about corn does deteriorate that fast. So you want to freeze it when it's at the peak. And that's what they do for the ones at the store. It's not like it's the ones that are left over and that's been sitting a while and they're like, oh, I should probably freeze this. So try to decide if you're going to freeze it, or like if you have extra early, and then freeze it right away instead of after it's been sitting around a few days. So you want to wash it and then you blanch it. So most all vegetables have to be done blanched to stop the nutrients, but a few don't, which is really nice. Like the green onions, cut onions don't, peppers don't, and tomatoes don't. So we're talking about peppers and tomatoes. And so those things, you don't have to blanch them and they'll stay okay. You can freeze them on a tray, like the cherry tomatoes, for instance, or the little tomatoes, and freeze them on the tray baking sheet. And then you transfer them to freezer bags once they're not all in a clump then, because then you can just pick out how many you need. All right, so drying vegetables, that's also an option. The calories don't change. You might have seen dried okra. See that sometimes. You same amount in the concentrated form. Fiber doesn't change. So if you think about like dried plums, they're concentrated with the fiber, so that's good. Some nutrients can be lost, such as the vitamin C, because that's affected by heat. And blanching is actually recommended to enhance quality and safety. So just if you want to, it's kind of a double check on the safety thing, just to kind of blanch the vegetables before you then dry them. So because that'll help keep them right at that greenness, right at the best nutrients. So I have more instructions on that if you would like to dry those like that. And then let's see here. So talking about a dehydrator, so you can use that. So you can see that pictured here, or you can do it in the oven, and you'd want to use 140 degrees is actually a little high for dehydrating, but a lot of them don't go that low. So you'd want the lowest setting and then open the door to allow the moist air to escape then. So that'll help dry it out. And then it really, needs that circulation to try to really dry out. So peas, you can just leave them in the pods on the plants until it has died down and before the pods split open. So you can just really dry them right on the plant. So that's an advantage there. And you can dried shelled peas then can keep for many months. So sometimes if you don't have freezer space, drying them might be a great idea. You can make things like sweet potato fruit roll up. I made a recipe for that. Savory, that eggplant jerky. You could try that. Sun dried cherry tomatoes roasted. You could do dried okra chips. And so there's a lot of fun ideas for dehydrating that would preserve them also. So just freezing, then going back to that, you don't have to blanch them. Cherry tomatoes, you just sheet pan and you freeze. Peppers, don't have to blanch them either, but they will lose their crispness. So that's the, obviously things that are frozen usually have a different taste than the fresh. And then hot peppers, you want to remove the stem. That'll help keep them good. Cooking sweet potatoes almost until tender. That'll help them stay like how you would want them. And so to prevent mashed sweet potatoes from darkening, you can add lemon juice or orange juice. So that will help, kind of like apples. Okra and eggplant, you want to blanch them. Sunchokes also blanch them. And then southern peas, blanch them also, unless they're dried. So canning vegetables, you can also go with that option. So there's the water bath, and then there's a pressure canning bath. And if anybody has any questions, they can email me on that. I have some great resources. The pressure canning needs to be done with most vegetables because they're less acidic than the fruits are. Sometimes the tomatoes can be boiled, just boiled, but they usually need to have some acid in there. So just same thing when you're canning them, you want to use them at the peak of their quality. So I used to work at Del Monte Foods, for instance, and the peaches, they don't use peaches that are just ones that they can't find any other uses for. They're using the ones and they're putting them straight from the tree. You're blanching them and putting them in the can there. So canning them. So canned foods, can be just as nutritious as fresh. So they're a great way of preserving. And then we have pickled vegetables. So you could try cucumbers, green beans, okra, peppers, and then other vegetables. Pickled okra, pretty good. So fresh, green, clean vegetables, you use the food safe containers. Just thinking about, the same thing. You want to use the best of the best for this. So you can brine pickles, and they are done by, usually fermentation. One or the other are cured for several weeks. So you can do it that way, or there's the quick pickles, which are produced using a hot vinegar solution. And you can email me for recipes if you would like them. And that's all we have today. So I'll try to send you a survey soon. And just if you can give us some feedback on what you might want to know more and just other ideas for different webinars. Ann and I have been talking about maybe doing mushrooms. If I can get her to, she's like, I don't know. Okay, so I guess, but does anyone have any questions? I see a few. Then if you have other ones, feel free to type them in. And I think they're you.
Yeah, I think I answered the one in the chat, and then there was a question about planting the zucchini and summer squash in some containers, 2 feet long, 7 inches deep. Are the containers big enough? 2 feet long. They might need to be moved up after a while. So remember the zucchini and squash, they're going to kind of vine a little bit. So if they're in a container, it needs to be big. They can kind of spill over the side for sure. But if you have a raised bed, that might work as well. But if the container is big enough and you have space around it to spill over and spread, then I think you'll be okay.
And what do you think about planting those now? Obviously they'll probably make it for a while, right? Is it just too hot? Is that why maybe the zucchini and summer squash? Zucchini and summer squash?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at the chat just a minute. Yeah, those will be planted a little bit later. Okay. And as far as when everything gets planted, we can send out with the evaluation link, we can send out the crop rotation fact sheet and then
Okay.
the vegetable planting. I can't remember the exact name. That has the graph with the little X's for when to plant and the harvesting dates. I can't remember the title of it. Is it okay? How can I watch this again? Missed the beginning. Are we going to post these anywhere or
Yeah, put it on YouTube. So I'll
on
send
YouTube?
out that link to you guys.
Okay. Okay.
Send that out.
And then is it okay to make garden beds out of heat treated pallets? Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't know that they treat pallets with other things. There's a lot of questions on what to plant in and what not to plant in. As far as if the wood or other planting materials treated with anything, if you can find out what it is, that would be good. But if it's just heat treated, it should be all right. Mhm. A garden journal that we sell. Yes. So our Master Gardener volunteers have a garden guide and journal. It's 86 pages long, maybe 88 pages. We've added a few. If you are in Polk County, you can purchase it at the Polk County Extension Office. They also sell it at the Nectary Nursery in Lakeland and the Polk Museum of Art. If you're not in Polk County, you can still use it. It's good for Central Florida. So I would say if you're not in Central Florida, it could maybe a little, the information might not be totally right, but it's fairly general gardening information. And it's $20. So.
Okay. Thank you guys a lot. And if you want to send me the handouts, just to make sure
I
I
will
have
do
the right
that.
ones,
Yep.
I would love
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay. You guys have a really good day and happy planting. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Hey, Andrea.